So we'll take the Grinch hat off in a moment, but I wanted to start the video with that to give you an idea of what's coming. So I've done my best of 2024 and I wanted to take a little bit of a spin on my worst. What I'm going to do today is talk about the products, the brands, the trends that have disappointed me in 2024. Okay, as promised, the hat is off. So there are a number of things that have disappointed me in 2024, some more so than others. But I will say that overall products have been less disappointing because I've been picking up less. I have been more discerning about what I bought, and when I'm buying things, I'm buying Chanel and Dior and Tom Ford. And overall, the quality is usually at least good. Not always, but usually. And I will say I am disappointed overall in the fact that luxury is declining in its quality. I feel like across the board, there hasn't been as much attention to detail. The packaging hasn't been as luxe. I think the ingredients have been less impressive to me over time. But that is a trend that seems to be continuing. I don't know where we're going to see luxury go in 2025. I've done numerous videos on it. I'm going to have another one where I talk about whether, frankly, luxury is dead. And I'll have one in the future about sort of the monopolistic creation we're seeing now with, Saks buying Neiman's and Nordstrom going private, and Macy's is sort of going to this weird, TJ Maxx kind of thing. So there's not really small individual, let's face it, Bergdorf's was bought by Neiman's. Bergdorf's doesn't exist in its same form that it used to. Then there was Henry Bendel's in New York, which is gone. Barney's is gone. Years before that, you had in Chicago, Marshall Field's. Then you had, and I just forgot their name in California, Fred Siegel, gone. So the really unique, very, individual kinds of businesses just aren't there anymore. So it's very difficult to find designers and brands that are a little bit avant-garde, a little bit different. They're all going to be the same wherever you go. At least that's the feeling that we're starting to get, which I find sad. And I hope a lot of smaller, independent, small businesses start to grow in the space so that they can compete and bring something a little bit more creative to the space, but we'll see what happens. So that's the overall trend, which is not particularly positive in my, I hate to start it off that way, but let's, we're talking about disappointing things. That's what I see. And, for people who love luxury, not just for the name on a bag, but for the actual creation of something that unique and beautiful, that is a sad happening. The only thing that I can say is that there is a very vibrant resale market now, pre-loved market, where I will be spending a lot of my, if not almost all of my budget for ready-to-wear and bags and jewelry, possibly as well. Beauty's a different sphere because let's face it, beauty goes bad, makeup goes bad, but ready-to-wear and shoes and bags and jewelry you can keep forever if it's good quality. And so I'm going to have my bag video coming up, but I don't intend on buying any newly created bags anytime soon. All the bags that I'm interested in are pre-loved except for one. And if I actually can get my hands on that bag, I'll do an unboxing here. So ready to wear, same thing. I like the vintage stuff, and jewelry, I love vintage jewelry, especially costume vintage jewelry, paste jewelry. I absolutely adore paste vintage jewelry. Of course, the prices have gotten exorbitant now, thousands of dollars for a lot of pieces. So what does that leave us with makeup and what we've seen in 2024? And there were a couple of things that I wanted to call out in addition to the trend of just less being more expensive. There's also this odd trend of just reintroducing things. Dior just did it. They just came out with their new bronzers in matte and glow formulas, and Dior has reintroduced their bronzers like 4 times. I like the Dior bronzers. I've liked the Dior bronzers for a while. I have it in shade 4. I think it's a great shade. It works really well on me. It's a good formula. But that was like the 2nd iteration or something. This is like the 4th. Will I try them? Maybe. I'll be honest with you guys. If you really want to see them, then yes, I will do it. But I feel like it's just a repackaging. The packaging looks nicer. They probably took out talc, which is what everybody's doing. Chanel has reintroduced their blushes for the I don't know how manyth time. And I am trying them out, and I will have a detailed video for you. But I can tell you right now in this video, it is disappointing. They are fine. They are not bad, but they are not close to being the Chanel blushes of old, which is why they didn't say anything about them being reformulated and released. They didn't make a big deal about it because really all they did was take out talc. I mean, they might have done some other things about moving things around, but that's really what they did. Which again, fine, but if you're going to go through all the trouble, just, you know, make them better. They're not. They're fine. They're okay, but they're nowhere close to the blushes of old. Just get that out there. I mean, I'll do an intricate video about whether it's the same weight and the scent and if it's better than the last one versus the one before that. But again, you get the gist. So there is this reformulation, reintroduction over and over and over. Chanel has done it with their lip liners like 3 times. And, you know, I liked it the first time they did it. MAC has lip liners that Spice lip liner, which now the shade is not even nearly the same shade as it was before. Chanel has Nude Brune, which is my favorite shade of all time, which they changed the color and just didn't mention it. So now if you buy Nude Brune and you had bought Nude Brune 4 years ago, it's not the same shade. So I get why brands do this because they're able to, you know, post about it, new, and reformulated so they make more money. But sometimes they're doing it and they're not even announcing that it's new, like with Chanel. And I think that's sort of the greenwashing, the I'm taking out talc, whatever it is, that brands have decided is what consumers want. Maybe it is, but I don't really hear that. So I'm not really sure what the business decision is behind these things when they're not announcing it. When they're announcing it, they're trying to make more money, basically off the exact same product. But if they're not even announcing it, I'm not really sure what they're doing. So that's another thing. Then there's the inconsistency issue. So there's a couple of brands and there's a couple of products that I would point to, most notoriously Dior and Tom Ford. The Dior eyeshadow. So here's one from Holiday, which is actually good formula. This one is actually very nice. This is the, get the name of it. This one is Golden Masquerade, and it's nice. And the other one was nice as well. The packaging was actually very cool. I like the gold. That looks nice. But the formulas aren't as good as the formulas that were reformulated 5 years ago. When they came out in 2020, they were fabulous, like some of the best. They had aloe and they had pine oil and they were smooth and they looked, I still have them. They said 6 months, but they still work fine. They looked so good on the eye. They were so fantastic. I bought all of them. And since then, some of the ones they've come out with have been great. Other ones they've come out with have been terrible. You usually get a good one most of the time now, but it's still not as good as the old formula, so I'm not exactly sure why they changed it. Again, reformulation for whatever's sake. But it's inconsistent from palette to palette. Tom Ford has done the same thing with their eyeshadows. Some are just amazing. The creme formula is like one of the best formulas I've ever seen. And then they have a wet dry formula that a lot of people love. I haven't seen a lot of that one. But then I've seen like 4 other formulas, which I don't even know what the formulas are. Like, I don't know the name of them. They're just Tom Ford. So I don't even know what the difference is. The one that came out for holiday is one of my favorites. I think it's fantastic, but I don't know what kind of formula it is. And I don't know what they did differently than other formulas. Why is it different than Metal Lust? Don't know. So there's this bizarre lack of transparency and inconsistency in the same product in an eyeshadow. Like if they're going to call one creme, they should call one wet and dry and call one something else. And then everybody knows what it is they're getting when they're buying it. The most egregious example of this year, the Hermes liners. Now Hermes is a little hit or miss for me in some of their products. Most of the time though, I really like the Hermes products. I like the makeup. The eyeshadows I love. Absolutely love them. Think they're phenomenally good. And I happen to like their lip shines. I know it's a lot of money for not a lot of pigment and not a lot of there, but I happen to really love them. The liners, on the other hand, are bizarre. Because here's the thing. I have it on today in the shade that I have on is Brun. I'm going to get the French wrong, but Brun Encore. This is a great shade. I have it on. It goes on super smooth. Honestly, guys, I wouldn't tell you if it wasn't true. It's really nice. It's not as soft as like the Chanel pencils or the Victoria Beckham pencils or any of those, but it's a really good liner that's very creamy and lasts. This thing did not come off. I had no problems with it. Haven't had any problems with it at all. The bronze one I have is exactly the same. It goes on, it's really nice. Again, not as good as some of my favorites, but really good pencil and does not come off all day. Now, the green one, this is in shade, which one is this? Vert Malachite, is a little drier. Can you see that? It's not as smooth as the brown, but it is incredibly pigmented. And once you put it on, it does not move. So if you're somebody who has really oily skin, or if you're somebody who has like, we talk about this with bleeding on your lips, this is a very dry pencil for the green, the Vert. And so it doesn't come off. It stays really, really well. And then the last one that I have is, I think it's Prune. No, it's Raisin, sorry, Raisin. And this one is very dry. You can see when I go like this, it doesn't, it's much harder to get the shade. However, again, if you're somebody who's willing to put the pressure in, again, pigmented and does not move. These do not move off my eyes. Like I have worn them for, what's the longest I've worn them? 16 hours? Yeah, 15, 16 hours. And none of them moved off my eye. Now again, I have dry skin, I don't have oily skin, so keep that in mind. But they didn't smudge, they didn't come off. Nothing. However, I have seen with my own eyes other shades and other pencils that people have had that were way worse than the Brune in regards to, being smooth. And then I've seen ones that smudge right off. So now I'm in a conundrum because the brown and the bronze I love, and the green, although a little harder to get pigment out, I love the shade and it lasts all day on me, so I'm willing to, it's a good trade-off for me. I'd like to get some of the other shades, like the greens and the blues, but now I have to go, I'm like, well, yeah, but the problem is I'm not gonna know if it's the formula that's good or the formula that's bad, or the formula that comes right off, or is it gonna be the dry formula that stays, which I would be willing to trade off for if it's the right color. So I haven't bought anymore. So if you're gonna buy an Hermes pencil, I would suggest buying it from Nordstrom, because then you can return it if it's the wrong formula, which is ridiculous. It's Hermes. These are incredibly expensive. I think they're $50 a piece. That should not be the case. They should all be like the Brune. The Brune is great. It's really, you saw how smoothly it went on, and it looks really good on the eye. Like it's a great shade. It's a warm brown and it's smooth. It lasts. It's really nice. But the thing is, I don't know if any of the other ones or which other one is like that. So I literally have to go through them all and watch other people's videos to see if some, maybe there's a particular shade that generally overall is good. And then buy it from Nordstrom and be like, hey, I might have to return these. Okay, for $50? I mean, it's it's not worth it. So my plan is there's a couple of shades, blue and green shades, that are so unique that I haven't seen anywhere else that I might buy them and just see how they work. And if I hate them and they're terrible, I will return them, which I think is a ridiculous statement, but that's kind of where I'm at. It's not going to happen anytime soon because I have a lot of makeup and I really don't need them. But there are like a couple shades that I would like to buy that I think are really pretty and unique. So, but I don't know what Hermes did there. I really don't. It's just ridiculous. Next is color choices. There have been some odd color choices, and there are a couple different brands that have done this, but the main one that comes to mind to me is Guerlain. What in the world do you do when you have this stunning crystal set cover and the Pucci cover, which was also amazing, and then you open it up to have this? This is a blush palette. Folks, this is a blush palette. Now, you could argue that somebody with a deeper skin tone would look better in these shades, and you are absolutely right if you make that argument. But even so, even then, you'd still want some, you know, diversity in the shades. Like, they're basically, 3 of them are almost the same shade, and one is a red. Not a red that, like a burgundy red that looks good on an eye, a red, which looks good on a cheek, but not necessarily an eye. So, maybe like, I don't know, a very small percentage of people. So, I don't know who it was going to appeal to. And the Pucci thing is the same. There's a black in there, which, okay, you can use it as liner or smudge things out, and a white, which are great. Then you've got purple. I mean, it was just, I'm really not sure. My only thought is that they realized that the packaging was going to be so like collectible that they were like, oh, forget it. We don't care what's inside of it. And if that's the case, that's just insulting. So I hope that wasn't it. But if you're gonna make a palette, an eyeshadow palette or a blush palette or anything else, at least have a vision of how it works. At least like the Chanel oversized palette that came out for the holidays. It's not my favorite color story, but they had a vision of how it worked. And when I used it in the way that they had envisioned it as a creative, as a makeup look, it looks really nice. It's very beautiful. Again, not particularly my look, but very beautiful. And I was like, oh, okay, you know, I get that. Again, it might not be mine, but I at least see the vision. I don't know what the vision for Guerlain's holiday or the Pucci collection really was. I'm sorry, but I just don't see it. And I can be pretty creative with my makeup, and I still don't really see those. So I don't know what that was. I don't know what that was. And I've seen it with other things as well. Like some of the palettes, it's the choices are either exactly the same colors or colors that honestly nobody's been asking for. You know, if you watch different channels, you get feedback from people. Yeah, we're all asking for like neutrals and cool neutrals at that. So if they were all cool neutrals, I'd be like, well, it's boring, but at least I get it. But that's not what we're talking about. So honestly, brands, work with me here. Next is foundations that aren't good at color matching. There are so many advances in foundations, skin tints, blurring, all this stuff, that I am let down when foundations come out and they cannot have a broad, first of all, spectrum of shades, but also that they can't be, what's the word I'm looking for, adaptable. Like if you use the Prada foundation, I can use 3 different shades and they all work for me. One I think is the most flattering, but they all work because they have this sort of adaptability in the way that they're created so that they mesh with your skin tone. There are so many brands that not only don't have a inclusive shade range, but also have like all yellow or all pink, or it's so freaking confusing to understand what you could possibly be that you'll never figure it out no matter what you do. And this year, Louboutin came out with a foundation, which I have on my face, which I actually think is a very nice foundation. It's a creamy foundation. It's a little bit heavier. It's not something I would reach for most of the time because I tend to favor like skin tints and stuff, but the foundation is actually very nice. And I could not tell you what shade I was. I have 15C, which is rosy nude, and it's actually a good match for me, but I will tell you right now, it's not rosy, nor is it rosy nude. And it's not cool. It's at its best neutral, but honestly, it runs, I think, a little yellow. So, although I think there's a decent shade range on this one, I'm looking at it right now, I think the deeper end of the shade range is still very inadequate. But I would say at least there's a shade range. And they try doing, like, they have some olives, they have some, like, bronze, like, they attempted something. But I'm also like, okay, but I look at this, the shade that I'm wearing, and I'm like, this is 15C. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, there's like 4 shades lighter than this. And it's not cool, guys. Like, it's definitely not cool. Is it yellow? No, but it's not a cool shade. It's like, maybe you could consider it beige. So like, that's fine, because actually that works relatively well for me because my skin is actually not that cool. My skin is peachy. So it actually works fine. But if somebody was walking into this with a pink undertone and really wanted something cool and rosy, this is not it. So this is Louboutin. This is an expensive bottle of foundation. It's $80 basically. And I think there could be more time and energy spent looking at actual skin tones and coming up with shades. I think Lisa Eldridge actually did this very well with her skin enhancer. I think there's more to do, but I think she really started to take into account, oh, there could be somebody pale who has olive undertones, and there could be someone who has deep skin who has reddish undertones. Like she really did try to incorporate, and she added new shades when she got feedback, and she's adding more. So that's the kind of thing that I think we can do, brands can do, and they don't do enough of, in my opinion. And so I feel like a lot of times the shades are just confusing. And along those lines, here's the Charlotte Tilbury. This is the Sheer Glow Tint. Okay, this was marketed as a foundation. This was marketed as a hydrating foundation stick. That's what it says on the side. This is not foundation. This is a glowy primer. This is her Healthy Glow Hollywood Flawless Filter in a stick, right? That's what this is. Now, I happen to really like this product as a stick form of the Hollywood Flawless Filter. I think it's really good. And I have it on my face today. Hopefully I'll have the video of me putting it on, and I think it's really nice. This is 1.5 fair. I think I could go up 1, actually, but I like it because it's like a highlighter right through here, so it actually works really well for me. But if somebody bought this and spent their money on it, like I did, and this was their big splurge, and they didn't have money to buy other things, they're going to be sorely disappointed that this is not a foundation. This is a highlighter. This is a glowy product, not even a skin tint. This is a glowy primer. Now, maybe you could say you could use it by itself if you want just a really glowy finish and you don't want anything on top of it. I could see that, but it's really glowy. And guys, my skin is very dry, so, I'm usually the one who's voting for the glowiness. That one, that's too glowy. Along the lines of the transparency that I mentioned before about the reformulations and not really knowing, what is what, I do want to call out Hourglass and this Barney's New York palette, which I love, and I'm happy to have it because Barney's was an institution that I think of very fondly, and I wish it still existed. So for me, this is nostalgia, and I was going to buy it no matter what was in it. However, for a lot of people, they didn't know that it was the Elephant palette, and exactly the same as the Elephant palette. And that later on, they came out with the ability to put something else in it. And the same thing was true for the, Evil Eye palette and the other palettes. Hourglass was not transparent in the fact that you could choose what you were going to put in it, and that the original one was the elephant. I think it would have been decent of them to have made that very clear to all the people that were spending a lot of money and who didn't know it. Now, you could look up the shades and realize it was the same, but that's not the same as a brand being transparent and honest and upfront about things. It's kind of like if an influencer got up here, like me, and said, this makes my lips look puffy, and doesn't mention that they've had, I don't know how many, I don't get my lips done, so I don't know how many units you put in your lips, but I'm guessing 2 units of lip filler in their lips. It's not, you have not given all the facts to the people that have to make the decisions. I think the best thing to do in these types of situations is give all the facts to everybody who are making the decisions and let them decide. They may decide, like I did, that I still want the Barney's New York palette because I want the nostalgia, I want the palette, I don't care what's in it. If it's the elephant one that I already own, that's fine. But let me make that decision. Don't try to obfuscate and not mention that it is, hoping that no one will really get mad, because people will get mad. People don't like being lied to. People don't like it if you don't divulge all the information up front. So I needed to mention that. And then last but not least, stop trying to fix what's not broken. Do not change your perfect powder, Givenchy, which I have on today, into something that doesn't have talc in it, but looks like a shiny light bulb. Don't do that. Change it back. Change it back. Guerlain, meteorites. Take the sandalwood out, go back to the old formula and the old perfume in the meteorites. I like the new scent. I think it's lovely, but there was no reason to change it. And last but not least, for goodness sakes, fix the thing you did with the lipsticks. I would have been much more of a proponent for Guerlain's new powder, which, by the way, is excellent and I think it's a good formula replacement for the Givenchy. It's not the same, but it is a good powder and I really like what they've done with it. But I would have been more vocal about that if I wasn't so salty about the fact that they changed the cases. And the reason it really bugs me, and a lot of people are like, well, just let it go. And, I have let it go. I've bought the new one. But the reason it bothers me is because it's almost identical. If they had changed it to an entirely new shape or product, I would have been like, well, that really sucks because I have tons of these old ones and I thought I could, have these for a long time and just interchange them. But I understand companies do change and things do change. But that's not what they did. They changed it slightly. They tweaked it. And when they tweaked it, they changed the color. That's the first thing that they did, which is interesting of itself. But if you notice, the new case does not fit on the old base. The old base fits on the old top fits on the new base, but there's a seam. And because there's a seam, you have to be a little concerned, right, that your however expensive lipstick in there is getting dry. You can see on this one, there's no seam. And then when I put the new bottom on, yes, it does close, but you see a seam that I can fit my nail in all the way around, which means air is getting in there and getting into your lipstick. If you buy the new case, you can put your old ones into it, but I don't know, the lips, like I said, you are letting air into the case, and for all I don't know how much air is really getting in, I don't know, but it's not a seamless seal. What that says to me though is that you could change it to the new gold, which you've already done, fine, leave it gold, and just tweak it again a little bit to be the same as before. I don't think it's gonna be a big deal. You have the old molds. Keep it gold if you want, that's fine. And really, if you're gonna do it and there's a reason other than greed, tell us. Again, back to the be honest, be upfront, give us all the information and let us decide. If there was a reason and it was a good one, let your consumers know. I mean, we can make reasonable decisions. I think we do them all the time. So if there was something that needed to be done and you could explain it, I think a lot of us would just be like, oh, okay. But what we assume is the worst, that it's just great, and that's not a good place to be. So that is my sad, my negative, disappointing worst of 2024. I tried to do it with some humor as best I could. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on what the worst things were, trends, products, etc. And hopefully we'll have even less of this next year. Thanks so much for joining me today, guys. I really do appreciate it. I hope to see you in another video really soon. Bye.